The dusty wind carried the scent of rain through Clifton, Arizona, on a September afternoon in 1878. But Olivia Murray no longer believed in fresh starts or second chances, as she knelt beside her husband's grave with dirt still under her fingernails from planting wildflowers. She had buried Thomas 3 months ago, watching the consumption take him piece by piece until there was nothing left but bones and a rattling cough that haunted her dreams. 26 years old and already a widow, Olivia felt ancient as she walked back to the small house on the edge of town, her black dress collecting dust with every step. The neighbors had stopped bringing casseroles weeks ago, and the pitying glances had faded into awkward silences whenever she passed. The ranch Thomas had worked so hard to build now sat like a monument to broken dreams. 12 acres of scrubland with a dozen cattle, a henhouse, and a barn that needed repairs she could not afford. The bank had given her until December to make the mortgage payment, and she had exactly $43 to her name. Olivia spent her days trying to keep the ranch running, rising before dawn to feed the animals, and falling into bed after dark with muscles screaming. She had loved Thomas deeply, marrying him when she was 22 after a brief courtship that felt like a fairy tale. He had been kind and gentle, a farmer's son who dreamed of building something lasting in the Arizona territory. The consumption had stolen him slowly, giving them both time to say goodbye but not enough time to prepare for the emptiness that followed. On a Thursday morning in late October, one of her cows broke through the fence and wandered onto the neighboring property. Olivia discovered the damage after breakfast and felt tears of frustration burning behind her eyes. She did not have money for fencing materials, and losing even one cow would devastate her already precarious finances. She grabbed her late husband's rope and headed east, following the tracks through the dry grass. The sun climbed higher as she walked, sweat dampening her collar despite the autumn chill. After 20 minutes, she spotted her cow grazing peacefully in a valley between two red rock formations. She also spotted a man on horseback watching the cow with apparent amusement. The rider sat easy in his saddle, a tall figure silhouetted against the bright sky. As Olivia approached, she could make out more details. He wore a dusty brown hat, a blue shirt faded from sun and washing, and worn leather chaps. A rope hung from his saddle horn, and he looked completely at home in the wilderness. "That your heifer?" he called out as she got closer. "She is," Olivia replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I apologize for the trespass. My fence gave out." The man dismounted with fluid grace, his boots hitting the ground softly. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that touched his collar. His eyes were a striking gray-green, and when he smiled, Olivia noticed a small scar on his chin. "No harm done," he said, his voice carrying a slight drawl that suggested Texas roots. "I am Dalton Turner. I work at the Circle R Ranch about 5 miles north of here." "Olivia Murray," she replied, extending her hand automatically. His grip was firm and warm, and she pulled away quickly, suddenly conscious of how rough her own hands had become. "Let me help you get her home," Dalton offered. "That is a fair walk, and she looks stubborn." Olivia wanted to refuse out of pride, but practicality won. "I would appreciate that." Working together, they managed to get a rope around the cow and began leading her back toward Olivia's property. Dalton walked alongside his horse, keeping pace with her easily. The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable but not hostile either. "You are Thomas Murray's widow," Dalton said after a while. "It was not a question. I am sorry for your loss. I heard he was a good man." Olivia nodded, throat tight. "He was. Must be hard running a place on your own." "I manage." But she did not manage, not really, and they both knew it. When they reached her property, Dalton helped her secure the cow in the barn and then examined the broken fence with a critical eye. "You have got some rot here," he observed, pointing to several posts, "and the wire is old." Surprised it held this long. "I know," Olivia said tersely. She did not need someone pointing out problems she could not fix. Dalton seemed to sense her defensiveness. He straightened, pushing his hat back slightly. "I could come by this Saturday and help repair it if you like. Would not take more than a few hours with two people working. I cannot pay you. Did not ask for payment." Olivia studied him, searching for ulterior motives. Men did not offer free labor without expecting something in return, in her experience. But Dalton's expression seemed genuine, his gray-green eyes steady and clear. "Why would you do that?" she asked bluntly. He shrugged. "Neighbors help neighbors. That is how things work out here, or should anyway. Besides, I have got Saturdays off, and I would rather be useful than sitting around the bunkhouse playing cards." She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her independence and pride. But the fence needed fixing, and winter was coming, and she was so tired of struggling alone. "All right," she agreed quietly. "Saturday morning I can provide lunch at least. Fair enough." Dalton swung back into his saddle with easy athleticism. "I will bring the supplies. Circle R has plenty to spare and my boss will not mind." He tipped his hat and rode off before she could argue about the supplies, leaving Olivia standing in her yard with a confused mixture of gratitude and suspicion. She had not had a real conversation with anyone besides the general store clerk in weeks, and the simple human interaction left her feeling strangely unsettled. Saturday arrived with clear skies and temperatures that promised a pleasant working day. Olivia woke early and made biscuits, then changed her dress 3 times before settling on a simple brown calico that she told herself was practical for outdoor work. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was simply being presentable. Dalton arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, riding a different horse than before and leading a pack horse loaded with fence posts and wire. He had brought tools as well, and he set to work with efficient competence that spoke of years of ranch experience. Olivia worked alongside him, holding posts steady while he tamped dirt around them, stretching wire while he secured it. They fell into an easy rhythm, and she found herself relaxing despite her initial wariness. Dalton did not pry into her circumstances or offer unwanted advice. He simply worked, occasionally making observations about the weather or the landscape. "How long have you been at the Circle R?" Olivia asked during a water break. "About 6 years now," Dalton replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Came up from Texas after my parents passed. Wanted a change of scenery. Do you like it here?" "I do. Arizona is different from Texas, but in good ways. More open somehow, more possibilities." He paused, taking another drink. "What about you? You from around here originally?" "Colorado," Olivia said. "My family had a farm near Denver. I met Thomas when he came through looking for supplies. We married and came south together 5 years ago. Must have been hard leaving your family." "It was, but Thomas was my family then." Her voice caught slightly, and she looked away, embarrassed by the show of emotion. Dalton did not press further, returning to work with quiet understanding. By early afternoon, they had replaced all the damaged sections and reinforced several weak spots. The fence looked sturdy and professional, better than anything Thomas had managed to build. "Come inside," Olivia said. "I have lunch ready." The house was small but well kept, with lace curtains Thomas had bought her as an anniversary gift, and a rocking chair his father had made. Olivia had set the table with her good dishes, and she served cold chicken, fresh biscuits, green beans from her garden, and apple pie she had baked that morning. Dalton ate with obvious appreciation, complimenting the food sincerely. They talked about inconsequential things during the meal, about the upcoming winter and the gossip from town. It felt almost normal, like having a friend visit, and Olivia realized how much she had missed simple human companionship. After lunch, Dalton prepared to leave. "Thank you for the meal," he said. "Best food I have had in months. Bunkhouse cooking is not much to speak of." "Thank you for the fence," Olivia replied. "I truly appreciate it." He nodded, settling his hat on his head. Then he hesitated, as if considering his words carefully. "If you need help with anything else, you can send word to the Circle R. I mean that. No obligation, no strings attached." Before she could respond, he was mounted and riding away, leaving her standing on the porch with a confusing swirl of emotions. Part of her wanted to maintain her isolation, to prove she could survive on her own as a tribute to Thomas's memory. But another part, a part she had been ignoring, felt desperately lonely and grateful for Dalton's kindness. The following weeks brought the first hard frost, and then an early snowstorm that blanketed Clifton in 6 inches of white. Olivia struggled to keep her animals fed and watered, breaking ice in the water trough every morning and evening. The cold seeped through the walls of her house, and she burned through firewood faster than anticipated. She saw Dalton twice in town, both times outside the general store. They exchanged polite greetings, and he asked how she was managing. She assured him she was fine, even as her dwindling funds and mounting exhaustion told a different story. In mid-November, disaster struck. Her barn roof partially collapsed under the weight of heavy snow, crushing her chicken coop and killing 3 of her 5 hens. Olivia stood in the wreckage and cried for the first time since Thomas's funeral, overwhelmed by the unfairness of everything. She rode into town the next day to inquire about repair costs, and returned home with a sick feeling in her stomach. The repairs would cost nearly all her remaining money, leaving nothing for the mortgage payment. She would lose everything. That evening, as purple twilight settled over the ranch, Olivia sat at her kitchen table and forced herself to face reality. She could not maintain the ranch alone. She needed to sell, to cut her losses and move back to Colorado with whatever money remained after settling debts. The thought felt like betraying Thomas, abandoning the dreams they had shared. But what choice did she have? A knock at the door startled her out of her dark thoughts. She opened it to find Dalton standing on her porch, hat in hand, expression concerned. "Heard about your barn from the post office clerk," he said. "Came to see if I could help. I appreciate the thought, but unless you can conjure money out of thin air, there is nothing to be done." Olivia tried to keep the bitterness from her voice and failed. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, too tired to argue. Dalton entered, his presence seeming to fill the small room. He looked at her with those steady gray-green eyes, and she felt suddenly self-conscious about her red-rimmed eyes and disheveled appearance. "How bad is it?" he asked quietly. Something about his tone, gentle but not pitying, broke through her defenses. The whole story came tumbling out. The mortgage deadline, her dwindling funds, the cost of repairs, her plan to sell and leave. She had not spoken this honestly with anyone since Thomas died, and the relief of sharing her burdens was almost physical. Dalton listened without interrupting, his face thoughtful. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "What if you did not have to do this alone?" he finally said. "I do not have anyone else." "You have me, if you will let me help." Olivia shook her head. "I already owe you for the fence. I cannot take charity, not charity. Partnership." Dalton leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I have savings, Olivia, about $300 set aside. I have been thinking about starting my own place but have not found the right opportunity. Your ranch has good bones, good land. With investment and 2 people working it, it could thrive. I cannot take your money. I am not offering to give it to you. I am proposing we become partners. I put in the money for repairs and the mortgage, you provide the land and livestock. We split the work and the profits. Legal and proper, drawn up by a lawyer. It was a generous offer, almost too generous. Olivia searched his face for hidden motives. Why would you do this? You barely know me. Dalton was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. I see someone struggling who deserves better. I see land worth saving and a person worth knowing. And honestly, I am tired of working for someone else's dreams. This could be a new start for both of us. People will talk, Olivia said. A widow and a single man working together. Let them talk. Anyone who knows you will understand this is a business arrangement. And anyone who does not know you does not matter. He paused. Think about it. You do not have to decide tonight, but you have until December, and that is not far off. After Dalton left, Olivia sat up late, watching the fire burn low while her mind raced. Every practical bone in her body said to accept his offer. It was the only way to save the ranch, to honor what Thomas had started. But accepting meant opening her life to someone new, trusting again after loss had taught her how painful trust could be. She thought about Thomas, about what he would want for her. He had made her promise in those final difficult days that she would not give up on living, that she would find happiness again, even though the idea had seemed impossible at the time. The next morning, Olivia rode to the Circle R ranch. The foreman directed her to the north pasture, where Dalton was working with a group of hands to move cattle to winter grazing. She waited on a small rise until he noticed her and rode over, surprise evident on his face. I accept your proposal, she said without preamble. The partnership, but we do it right with a lawyer and a proper contract. A slow smile spread across Dalton's face, transforming it completely. We will go to town tomorrow and draw up the papers. They shook hands to seal the agreement, and Olivia felt a flutter of something she could not quite name. It was not love, certainly not yet, but perhaps it was hope, that fragile thing she had thought died with Thomas. The lawyer in Clifton was a pragmatic man named Henderson, who asked sensible questions and drew up papers that protected both parties. The partnership agreement specified that Dalton would invest $300 in exchange for a 40% share of the ranch and its profits. Olivia would retain majority ownership and control of day-to-day decisions. Either party could dissolve the partnership with 6 months' notice. With the paperwork signed, they went directly to the bank and made the mortgage payment. The banker, a sour-faced man named Pritchard, looked disappointed to see Olivia walking out with her deed still in hand. The next several weeks passed in a blur of hard work. Dalton officially moved from the Circle R to Olivia's ranch, taking up residence in the small bunkhouse Thomas had built years ago but never finished. They worked together to repair the barn, replacing broken beams and patching the roof before the next snowstorm hit. Dalton proved to be an excellent carpenter, and under his patient instruction, Olivia learned skills she had never imagined needing. They fell into a routine. Olivia would rise first and make breakfast, which they ate together in the main house kitchen. Then they would divide the day's chores, working side by side or independently as needed. Lunch was a simple affair, usually leftovers or sandwiches eaten quickly before returning to work. Dinner became their time to review progress and plan the next day's tasks. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ranch began to transform. The barn stood solid and weatherproof. They built a new chicken coop, and Dalton surprised Olivia with 6 young hens he bought from a neighboring ranch. They repaired the corral fence and sorted through equipment, mending what could be fixed and making lists of what needed replacing. Christmas approached, and with it came the first real test of their partnership. The town was organizing a holiday dance, and several well-meaning neighbors suggested to Olivia that she should attend, that it was time to return to social activities. The thought filled her with dread. She had not been to a social gathering since Thomas's funeral, and the idea of making conversation and pretending to be festive felt exhausting. "You should go," Dalton said when she mentioned it over dinner. "It would be good for you to see people, to have some fun." "I do not feel much like fun," Olivia admitted, "and people will stare and whisper." "Probably," Dalton agreed cheerfully, "but you cannot hide on this ranch forever. Thomas would not want that." She shot him a sharp look, but his expression was kind, not judgmental. "How would you know what Thomas wanted?" "Because any man who loved his wife would want her to keep living after he was gone, would want her to find joy again." Dalton set down his fork, his voice gentle but firm. "You have been existing, Olivia, not living. There is a difference." The words stung because they were true. "Are you planning to attend?" she asked. "I was thinking about it. Would be nice to socialize a bit, hear some music." "Then I suppose we could go together," Olivia heard herself say, "as partners, so people see we are respectable business associates." Dalton's eyes crinkled with amusement. "As partners? That sounds fine." The night of the dance, Olivia pulled out a green dress she had not worn in over a year. It was not black, which felt both liberating and vaguely scandalous. She arranged her dark blonde hair carefully, and even put on the pearl earrings Thomas had given her on their wedding day. When she emerged from her bedroom, Dalton was waiting in the parlor, wearing clean black trousers and a pressed white shirt. He had trimmed his hair and shaved carefully, and Olivia was struck by how handsome he looked. The thought immediately made her feel guilty, and she pushed it away. "You look lovely," Dalton said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you. You look quite presentable yourself." They rode into town in Olivia's wagon, making comfortable conversation about the ranch and the dropping temperatures. The community hall was decorated with pine boughs and candles, and music spilled out into the cold night air. Inside, it seemed half the town had turned out, dressed in their best and ready to celebrate. Olivia immediately felt the attention turn toward them. Conversations paused, and eyes tracked their progress across the room. She lifted her chin and smiled politely, refusing to show discomfort. "Mrs. Murray," the preacher's wife, Sarah Collins, approached with a warm smile. "How wonderful to see you. And Mr. Turner, is it?" "Yes, madam," Dalton replied, tipping an invisible hat. "Pleasure to see you again. We heard you are working the Murray Ranch now." Such a blessing for Olivia to have help. These times are difficult for a woman alone. Before Olivia could respond, Sarah had whisked her away to join a group of women near the refreshment table, leaving Dalton to the men gathered by the door. Olivia endured 30 minutes of thinly veiled questions about her living arrangements and her relationship with Dalton before she managed to extract herself. She found Dalton in conversation with several ranchers, discussing cattle prices and water rights. He glanced up as she approached and must have read something in her expression because he politely excused himself. "Want to get some air?" he asked quietly. "Please." They stepped outside into the crisp December night. Olivia breathed deeply, letting the cold clear her head. "I am sorry. I thought I could handle this, but everyone is so curious and judgmental." "They are just nosy," Dalton said. "Give them time. Once they see we are serious about making the ranch work, they will find something else to gossip about. It bothers me that they think poorly of you because of me." "I do not care what they think. I care that you are uncomfortable." He hesitated, then added, "We could go back home if you like. No shame in that." Olivia considered it, then shook her head. No, you were right before. I need to live, not just exist. And that means facing down small-town gossip. She managed a real smile. Besides, they have good music in there and I have not danced in a very long time. Then we should fix that, Dalton said, offering his arm. They returned inside, and when the next song started, a lively reel, Dalton led her onto the dance floor. He was a good dancer, confident but not showy, and Olivia found herself laughing as they moved through the steps. Other couples joined them, and soon the floor was crowded with swirling skirts and stomping boots. They danced 3 more dances before taking a break, both flushed and breathless. Olivia could not remember the last time she had felt so light, so present in a moment. For a few hours, the weight of grief and responsibility lifted, and she was simply a woman enjoying an evening out. As the night wore on, she noticed the whispers and stares lessening. Several people approached to chat normally, asking genuine questions about the ranch and complimenting her dress. By the time they left near midnight, Olivia felt as though she had reclaimed a small piece of herself. "Thank you," she said to Dalton as they rode home under a sky brilliant with stars, "for pushing me to go and for being a good partner tonight." "Thank you for trusting me," Dalton replied. "I know that is not easy for you." They rode in comfortable silence for a while before Olivia asked, "Do you ever think about getting married, having a family?" The question surprised her as much as him. She had not planned to ask it, but the night and the dancing and the feeling of connection had loosened her tongue. Dalton was quiet for a long moment. "I did once," he finally said. "I was engaged back in Texas before I came here. Girl named Mary Beth. We grew up together, planned to marry after harvest. What happened? She decided she wanted a banker instead of a cowboy. Married him 3 weeks after breaking off our engagement." His voice held no bitterness, just a matter-of-fact acceptance. "I realized then that we probably were not right for each other anyway. She wanted security and status. I wanted land and freedom. Those things do not always go together." "I am sorry," Olivia said softly. "Do not be. I got over it, and it taught me something important. Real partnership, whether in marriage or business or anything else, requires 2 people wanting the same things, moving in the same direction. Anything less is just 2 people living side by side, not together." His words resonated deeply with Olivia. She had had that kind of partnership with Thomas, that unity of purpose and vision. She had not thought she would ever find it again, had not even thought she wanted to. But as winter deepened and Christmas came and went, marked by a quiet celebration with roasted chicken and apple pie, Olivia began to notice changes in herself. She woke each morning with a sense of purpose rather than dread. The ranch work felt less like an impossible burden and more like a shared challenge. And she looked forward to the evenings, to sitting by the fire and talking with Dalton about everything and nothing. He was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that surprised her, and a thoughtful intelligence that showed in his observations about people and the world. He told her stories about his childhood in Texas, about learning to rope cattle from his grandfather and breaking horses with his father. She shared memories of growing up in Colorado, of harsh winters and her mother's flower garden that somehow thrived despite the altitude. They talked about Thomas, sometimes too. Dalton asked questions carefully, seeming to understand that Olivia needed to keep her late husband's memory alive, to integrate her past into her present rather than abandoning it. Those conversations were bittersweet but healing, allowing her to remember the good times without drowning in grief. One evening in January, a blizzard trapped them both inside for 3 days. They played cards, read from the small collection of books on Olivia's shelf, and talked for hours. Dalton taught her to play poker, and she taught him the words to ballads her mother used to sing. The forced intimacy should have been awkward, but instead it felt natural, comfortable in a way that surprised them both. On the third night, as wind howled outside and snow piled against the windows, they sat by the fire talking about dreams for the ranch. Dalton wanted to expand the cattle herd, to breed quality stock that would sell for premium prices. Olivia wanted to plant an orchard, to have fruit trees that would provide for years to come. "We could do both," Dalton said. "It would take time, but with careful planning and hard work, we could build something really special here." "We," Olivia repeated softly. "I like that word." Dalton looked at her, firelight playing across his features. "So do I." Something shifted in that moment, a subtle change in the air between them. Olivia felt it like a physical presence, that awareness of him as more than just a business partner or friend. She saw recognition in his eyes that suggested he felt it too. Neither of them spoke of it, not that night or in the days that followed. But the awareness remained, growing stronger as winter slowly gave way to early spring. Olivia found herself noticing small things about Dalton. The way he hummed while working, how he always made sure she had the better tools, the gentle patience he showed with the animals. He was kind without being weak, strong without being domineering, and she felt safe with him in a way that went beyond physical protection. March brought warmer weather and longer days. They began preparing the ground for planting, turning over soil that had been frozen for months. Olivia ordered seeds from a catalog, dreaming of vegetables and flowers and the fruit tree saplings Dalton had promised to help her plant. One afternoon, they were working together to repair a section of the water trough when Dalton suddenly straightened, wincing and pressing a hand to his back. "Are you all right?" Olivia asked, concern immediate. "Just stiff," he said. "I am not 20 anymore. You are barely 30. That is hardly ancient." But she saw the tightness around his eyes that meant he was in more pain than he admitted. "Come inside. I will make willow bark tea." In the kitchen, she heated water while Dalton settled into a chair at the table. His shirt was damp with sweat despite the cool spring air, and Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders. "Take off your shirt," she said. When he looked surprised, she added, "I learned basic healing from my mother. I might be able to help." Dalton hesitated, then unbuttoned his shirt and pulled it off. His back was muscled from years of hard work, and Olivia could see the knot of tension in his lower back. She warmed her hands by the stove, then gently pressed them to the affected area, kneading carefully. Dalton inhaled sharply at first, then slowly relaxed as she worked. Olivia tried to focus on the healing task, but she was intensely aware of the warmth of his skin, the strength in his body, the simple intimacy of touch. It had been so long since she had touched another person like this, with care and connection. "That is better," Dalton said after several minutes, his voice slightly rough. "You have a gift for healing. My mother always said gentle hands could fix most problems." Olivia stepped back, suddenly flustered. The tea should be ready. She poured 2 cups and they sat together, the afternoon light slanting through the windows. The moment had charged the air between them with something new and uncertain. "Olivia," Dalton said carefully, "I want to be honest about something." Her heart began to beat faster. "All right. When I first offered to help you, it truly was just about being a good neighbor, about seeing someone who needed assistance. But these past months, working with you, getting to know you, things have changed for me." He met her eyes directly. "I have developed feelings for you, real feelings, and I need you to know that, even though I understand you might not feel the same way." Olivia's first instinct was to deny, to retreat into the safety of widowhood and grief. But Dalton deserved better than deflection. She took a deep breath. "I do not know what I feel," she admitted. I loved Thomas so much, and part of me feels like loving someone else would betray that. But another part of me, a part that grows stronger every day, cares for you deeply. You make me laugh. You make me feel capable and strong. You have shown me that life can still hold good things. I am not asking you to forget Thomas, Dalton said gently. I am not asking you to replace him. I am just asking if there might be room in your heart for something new. For me. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, a mixture of grief and hope and fear. Thomas told me before he died that I should not stop living, that I should open myself to happiness if it came. I did not believe I ever could. But then you showed up with your kindness and your steady presence, and you have given me back pieces of myself I thought were lost forever. Dalton reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was warm and solid, an anchor in uncertain waters. We do not have to rush anything. We can take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know where I stand. I want to try, Olivia whispered. I want to see if my heart can bloom twice, but I need patience. I need understanding. You have both, Dalton promised, for as long as you need. They sat together as the sun set, hands clasped, both of them trembling slightly with the enormity of what they had acknowledged. It was not a declaration of love, not yet, but it was the beginning of a path forward, and that was enough. In the weeks that followed, their relationship shifted subtly but profoundly. They still worked as partners, still divided chores and made decisions together. But now there were small touches, his hand on her back as they walked, her fingers brushing his as she passed him tools. They sat closer in the evenings, and sometimes Olivia would rest her head on his shoulder while they talked by the fire. Dalton courted her with old-fashioned patience. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow and helped her plant a small garden outside the kitchen window. He fixed her rocking chair when it developed a squeak and built her a bookshelf for the growing collection of novels she ordered from town. Every action spoke of care and consideration, of a man who was willing to earn her trust one day at a time. In April, the town organized a spring social, and this time Olivia did not hesitate when Dalton asked if she wanted to attend. She wore a blue dress Thomas had never seen, and she did not feel guilty about it. They danced most of the evening, and when a slower waltz began, Dalton pulled her close, his hand warm on her waist. "People are definitely talking now," Olivia murmured, though she did not pull away. "Let them talk," Dalton replied. "All I care about is you." Looking up into his gray-green eyes, Olivia felt something click into place inside her. This was not the passionate, all-consuming love she had felt for Thomas in their youth. This was something different, something deeper and more grounded. This was the love of two people who had been tested by life and chosen to be brave enough to try again. "I love you," she said, the words surprising her with their certainty. Dalton's face transformed with joy. "I love you too. I have for a while now." They kissed for the first time right there in the middle of the dance floor in front of half the town. It was sweet and tender and filled with promise. Around them, music swelled and people murmured, but Olivia did not care. She had spent months caring what people thought, letting grief and propriety dictate her choices. Tonight, she was choosing happiness. She was choosing love. The ride home was quiet but charged with new energy. When they arrived at the ranch, Dalton walked her to the door of the main house as he always did. But this time, when he turned to leave, Olivia caught his hand. "Stay," she said softly. "Not in the bunkhouse. Stay here with me." "Are you sure?" Dalton asked, searching her face. "I am sure. Life is too short and too uncertain to waste time. I want to be with you, fully and completely." He kissed her again, deeper this time, with passion that had been carefully restrained for months. Olivia responded with equal fervor, feeling alive in ways she had thought were lost to her forever. They stumbled inside, hands exploring, mouths meeting again and again. That night, they came together with tenderness and desire, learning each other's bodies and hearts simultaneously. Olivia wept afterward, but they were tears of release, of letting go of the past while honoring it, of accepting that she deserved this second chance at love. "I want to marry you," Dalton said as they lay tangled together in the early morning hours. "But only when you are ready, when you feel the time is right." Olivia thought about it. Society said she should wait longer, that a decent mourning period was at least a year, preferably 2. But society had not sat with her through the lonely nights, had not helped her rebuild her life and her hope. Dalton had done that. He had earned the right to be her husband, and she was tired of letting other people's opinions dictate her happiness. 3 months, she said. "Let us marry in 3 months. That will be over a year since Thomas passed, and it gives us time to plan properly." 3 months, Dalton agreed, kissing her forehead. "I will make you happy, Olivia. I promise that with everything I am." "You already do," she replied truthfully. They told people in town the following week. The reactions were mixed. Some congratulated them warmly, happy to see Olivia moving forward with her life. Others clucked their tongues and whispered about unseemly haste and disrespect to the dead. The preacher was kind but cautious, asking Olivia privately if she was certain about her decision. "I am," she told him firmly. "Thomas wanted me to be happy. Dalton makes me happy. I see no reason to wait longer just to satisfy people who have no stake in my life." The preacher smiled. "That is a fair point, Mrs. Murray. If you are certain, then I will be honored to perform the ceremony." They planned a simple wedding for late July. Olivia made herself a new dress in pale yellow, and Dalton bought a new suit. They invited close friends and neighbors, perhaps 50 people in total. The ceremony would be held at the church, followed by a reception at the ranch. As the date approached, Olivia found herself thinking often about Thomas. She visited his grave regularly, bringing fresh flowers and sitting in the grass to talk to him as if he could hear. She told him about Dalton, about the love growing in her heart, about her guilt and her hope. "I will always love you," she said one warm afternoon in early July. "You were my first love, my first husband, and you taught me what real partnership means. I am not forgetting you or replacing you. I am honoring what you gave me by opening myself to love again. I hope you would be happy for me. I think you would like Dalton. He is a good man, Thomas. A man you would respect." The wind rustled through the grass, and Olivia felt a sense of peace settle over her. Thomas was gone, but the love they had shared continued to shape her, to make her capable of loving again. That was not betrayal. That was legacy. The wedding day dawned clear and hot, a perfect Arizona summer morning. Olivia woke early in the house she had shared with Thomas and would soon share with Dalton. She bathed carefully and dressed slowly, savoring the significance of the day. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman transformed from the hollow-eyed widow of a year ago. She looked healthy and vibrant, her eyes bright with anticipation. Sarah Collins arrived mid-morning to help with final preparations, bringing a bouquet of wildflowers she had gathered herself. "You look beautiful," she said warmly. "Truly happy." "I am," Olivia replied. "It feels strange to say that, but it is true. There is no shame in happiness, dear. The heart is capable of holding many loves, and each one is precious in its own way." At 2 o'clock, Olivia walked into the church on the arm of Mr. Henderson, the lawyer who had drawn up the original partnership agreement. The small sanctuary was packed with people, all of them standing and turning to watch her progress down the aisle. She barely noticed them. Her eyes were locked on Dalton, standing at the altar in his new suit, his face radiating joy. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They recited traditional vows, promising to love and honor each other through all circumstances. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Dalton kissed her deeply, and the congregation erupted in applause. The reception at the ranch was lively and joyful. People ate and drank and danced in the yard. Olivia waltzed with her new husband under the late afternoon sun, feeling as though she was floating. Several of the older women approached her during the evening, sharing their own stories of second loves and new beginnings. She realized she was not alone in her journey, that many women had walked this path before her and found happiness on the other side of grief. As evening fell and guests began to depart, Dalton pulled Olivia aside. "Come with me," he said mysteriously. "I have something to show you." He led her behind the barn to a small clearing she rarely visited. There, planted in neat rows, were a dozen young fruit trees. Apple, peach, cherry, and pear, each one carefully staked and watered. "Your orchard," Dalton said simply. "I planted them last month and have been watering them every day. They should bear fruit in a few years. I wanted you to have your dream." Olivia was speechless, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Here was visible proof of his commitment, not just to her but to their shared future. These trees would outlive them both, would feed their children and grandchildren, would stand as living monuments to the love they had built from ashes and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, standing on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me, for loving me." "Always," Dalton promised. "For the rest of my life." They stood together among the young trees as stars emerged overhead, wrapped in each other's arms, looking forward to the future they would build together. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, but a joyful one. Dalton moved fully into the main house, and they reorganized the space to reflect both of them. His books joined hers on the new shelf. His clothes hung beside hers in the wardrobe. They were building a life together, not erasing the past, but creating something new alongside it. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. They expanded the cattle herd as planned, purchasing quality breeding stock. The orchard trees grew strong and healthy. Olivia's vegetable garden produced abundantly, and she began selling excess produce in town, creating a small additional income stream. Dalton's reputation as a skilled horseman led to occasional work breaking horses for neighbors, which he did for fair prices that added to their savings. By the following spring, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The news filled her with complex emotions. She was thrilled at the prospect of having a child, of building a family with Dalton. But she also felt a pang of sadness that Thomas would never meet this child, that this new life represented a future he was not part of. Dalton was overjoyed when she told him. "A baby," he said wonderingly, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents." "Are you ready for this?" Olivia asked, sudden nerves overtaking her. "I am ready for anything if it is with you," Dalton replied. "We will figure it out together. That is what we do." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Olivia found the Arizona summer heat oppressive in ways it had never bothered her before. Dalton was endlessly patient, taking over the heavier chores without complaint and fussing over her in ways that were equal parts touching and annoying. In November, nearly 2 years after Thomas's death and 15 months after her marriage to Dalton, Olivia went into labor. Sarah Collins served as midwife, and after 12 hours of hard work, Olivia delivered a healthy baby boy. "He is perfect," Dalton said, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Daniel Thomas Turner, honoring both the new family they were building and the man whose death had ultimately brought them together. As Olivia held her son and watched her husband's face glow with love, She felt a sense of completeness she had not known was possible after losing Thomas. The baby brought new challenges and new joys. Sleepless nights were offset by first smiles and tiny grasping hands. The ranch work continued, adapted now to accommodate an infant. Dalton proved to be a natural father, patient with the baby's cries and surprisingly adept at changing diapers and rocking Daniel to sleep. On a cool evening in early December, when Daniel was about a month old, Olivia bundled him warmly and walked to Thomas's grave. She had not visited in months, caught up in pregnancy and new motherhood, and she felt the need to introduce her son to the man who had been her first love. "This is Daniel," she said softly, sitting on the grass beside the headstone. "He has my eyes and Dalton's chin, and he is healthy and strong. I wish you could have known him, Thomas. I wish a lot of things, but I am happy now, truly happy, and I hope that brings you peace wherever you are. You will always be part of my story, and I will make sure Daniel knows about you, about the good man you were and the dreams you had." The wind sighed through the grass, and Olivia felt that sense of peace again, that assurance that she was on the right path. She walked home as the sun set, her son sleeping peacefully in her arms, to the house where her husband was waiting with dinner and a warm fire. Years passed with the steady rhythm of ranch life. Daniel grew into a curious toddler, then an energetic boy who loved following his father around and learning about cattle and horses. 2 more children followed, a daughter named Emma when Daniel was 3, and another son, James, 2 years after that. The ranch expanded gradually and successfully. The orchard matured, producing fruit that Olivia preserved or sold in town. Their cattle operation developed a reputation for quality, and they were able to purchase additional land from a retiring neighbor. They built a larger barn and added a proper bunkhouse for the seasonal hands they hired during busy periods. Olivia remained close with several women in town, forming friendships that sustained her through the challenges of raising children and running a ranch. She no longer felt like an outsider or an object of pity. She was simply Mrs. Turner, respected for her business sense and her warm heart. Thomas's memory gradually softened from a sharp pain to a gentle ache. Olivia still visited his grave occasionally, bringing flowers and sitting to think about the past. But those visits became less frequent as the present demanded more of her attention and provided more joy. She had not forgotten her first love, but she had successfully integrated that loss into a life that was full and rich and forward-looking. When Daniel was 6 years old, he asked about the name on the gravestone near the old oak tree. Olivia sat down with him and explained carefully about Thomas, about how she had been married before, about how illness had taken him away. "So father is not my real father?" Daniel asked, confused. "Dalton is absolutely your real father in every way that matters," Olivia said firmly. "He loves you, he raises you, he chose to be your father. But I wanted you to know about Thomas too because he was important to me and his memory is part of our family story." "Did you love him?" "I did. Very much. And I love your father too. The heart is big enough for many loves, Daniel. Thomas taught me what real partnership meant, and that lesson helped me build a good life with Dalton. That is a gift we should honor." Daniel seemed satisfied with this explanation, and as the children grew older, Thomas became a comfortable part of the family history. They would mention him naturally in conversation, acknowledging his role in their story without dwelling on the loss. On a spring afternoon when Olivia was 38 and Dalton was 42, they sat together on the porch watching their 3 children play in the yard. Daniel was 12 now, already showing signs of the man he would become. Emma was 9, bright and fearless. James was 7, gentle and thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked Dalton suddenly. taking a chance on a grieving widow and her failing ranch. Dalton looked at her with those steady gray-green eyes that had first caught her attention so many years ago. Not for a single moment. You are the best decision I ever made, Olivia. This life we have built, these children, this land, all of it is better than anything I could have imagined. I love you, she said simply. Thank you for showing me that love could bloom twice. It can bloom 1,000 times if you let it, Dalton replied, taking her hand. That is what I learned from you. Love is not a finite resource. It grows and changes and expands to fill whatever space you give it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the Arizona landscape in shades of gold and amber. The ranch stretched around them, productive and prosperous, a testament to hard work and partnership. The orchard trees stood tall and mature, heavy with developing fruit. Cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. Everything spoke of stability and success and love. That evening, after the children were in bed, Olivia pulled out a box she kept on the high closet shelf. It contained letters Thomas had written her during their courtship, a few photographs, and small mementos from their marriage. She looked through them periodically, not to wallow in grief, but to remember and honor what they had shared. Dalton found her sitting on the bed with the box open, a letter in her hands. He did not speak, just sat beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. He would have liked you, Olivia said. Thomas, I mean. You have a lot of the same qualities: kindness, determination, a good sense of humor. I wish I could have known him, Dalton replied. Anyone who could love you as well as he did must have been a remarkable man. He was, and so are you. Olivia carefully packed the items back in the box. I am lucky to have had two remarkable loves in one lifetime. As the years continued to pass, the Turner family became a cornerstone of the Clifton community. Olivia served on the church committee and helped organize town events. Dalton was elected to the local Ranchers Association board. Their children attended the town school and grew into capable, kind young people. Daniel showed an early aptitude for ranching and began taking on more responsibility as he entered his teenage years. Emma developed a passion for medicine after helping Sarah Collins tend to a neighbor's injury, and Olivia began setting aside money for the girls' education. James loved the land itself, spending hours exploring the arroyos and rock formations, collecting specimens and drawing detailed pictures of plants and animals. When Olivia turned 45, Dalton surprised her by taking her on a week-long trip to San Francisco. It was the first time either of them had been to a major city, and they explored with wide-eyed wonder. They saw the ocean for the first time, ate at fancy restaurants, and attended the theater. But by the end of the week, they were both eager to return home to Arizona, to the land and the life they had built together. I do not need grand adventures, Olivia told Dalton on the train ride home. Everything I need is already waiting for us at the ranch. Agreed, Dalton said, squeezing her hand. Though it is good to see new places, to remember how big the world is. The world can be as big as it wants. My world is right-sized for me. They arrived home to find the ranch running smoothly under Daniel's temporary management. At 16, he had handled everything competently, and his parents' pride was evident. Emma had kept up with the household chores and helped her brother, and even young James had done his part. You raised them well, Dalton told Olivia that night as they lay in bed, exhausted but happy to be home. We raised them well, Olivia corrected. Everything good in my life is because of partnership, first with Thomas, then with you. I learned that lesson young, and it has served me well. As their children grew into adults and began making their own ways in the world, Olivia and Dalton settled into a comfortable rhythm. Daniel took over more of the daily ranch operations, though his parents remained involved in major decisions. Emma went east to study nursing, supported by her parents' savings and fierce pride. James decided to attend college in Tucson to study geology and biology, his love of the land translating into scientific curiosity. The ranch continued to prosper, and Olivia and Dalton finally had time for each other in ways they had not since the early days of their relationship. They took long rides together through the countryside, rediscovering the simple pleasure of each other's company. They hosted dinners for friends and neighbors, their home becoming known for warm hospitality and good food. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Dalton had a surprise for Olivia. He led her out to the orchard, now mature and productive, and showed her a bench he had built and placed among the trees. "I thought you might like a place to sit and read," he said. "Or just to think. I know you used to do that before life got so busy." Olivia ran her hand over the smooth wood, noting the careful craftsmanship. "It is perfect, thank you." Carved into the back of the bench were words that made her eyes fill with tears. "Where love blooms eternal." "You gave me the courage to believe in love again," Olivia said, pulling him close. 20 years ago, I thought my life was over. You showed me it was just beginning differently." "We showed each other," Dalton corrected. "I was adrift before I met you. You gave me purpose and a home and a family. Everything good in my life comes from that day when your cow wandered onto the wrong property." They laughed together, remembering that first meeting, how uncertain and awkward it had been, how neither of them could have imagined where it would lead. As they sat together on the new bench, surrounded by fruit trees they had planted together and nurtured for decades, Olivia felt profound gratitude for the unpredictable path her life had taken. She had loved and lost and loved again. She had built 2 different lives with 2 different men, and both experiences had been precious. Thomas would always be part of her story, the foundation on which everything else was built. His death had devastated her, but it had also ultimately led her to Dalton, to the children they had created, to the life they had built together. She did not believe in everything happening for a reason, but she believed in resilience and hope and the human capacity to start over. The sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. In the distance, they could hear Daniel calling the cattle in for the evening. Closer, the sound of a horse approaching told them Emma had arrived home for a visit from nursing school. Life continued its steady rhythm, full of work and love and the small domestic pleasures that made existence worthwhile. "I have been thinking," Dalton said as they watched the sunset. "We should take another trip next year, maybe to Colorado to see where you grew up." "I would like to see the place that formed you." "I would like that," Olivia agreed. "My parents are both gone now, but I still have cousins there. It would be nice to visit, to show you where I came from." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, neither of them in a hurry to move. These moments of peace were gifts they had learned not to take for granted. Life had taught them both that nothing was permanent, that loss could strike without warning. But those lessons had also taught them to appreciate what they had while they had it, to squeeze every drop of joy from the present moment. Eventually, they stood and walked hand in hand back to the house, ready for dinner and whatever else the evening would bring. Behind them, the orchard stood as testament to patience and planning, to the long view that good partnerships required. The trees would continue producing fruit long after Olivia and Dalton were gone, fed by the deep roots they had established and nurtured over decades. Inside the house, Emma had already started preparing dinner and Daniel had come in from the fields. James would arrive in a few days for his spring break, and the family would be complete again for a while. These gatherings were becoming more precious as the children established their own independent lives, each visit a reminder that the work of raising them was largely complete. After dinner, as Emma washed dishes and Daniel went through ranch accounts, Olivia and Dalton sat together in the parlor. She worked on mending while he read the newspaper, a scene they had enacted countless times over 20 years of marriage. The comfort of routine, of knowing each other so well that words were often unnecessary, was its own form of intimacy. "You remember the first time we danced?" Olivia asked suddenly. Dalton looked up from his paper and smiled. "The Christmas dance, a few months after we met. You were nervous about what people would think. And you told me to let them talk. Best advice I ever gave. Though you looked so beautiful that night, I would have fought anyone who said otherwise. You looked rather handsome yourself. I remember being surprised by it, ashamed that I was noticing." "Grief makes room for new things in its own time," Dalton said wisely. "You could not have rushed it, no matter how much I might have wished otherwise." "Would you do it again?" Olivia asked. "Knowing how difficult those early months were, how long it took me to fully open my heart, without hesitation," Dalton replied immediately. "You were worth waiting for. You are worth everything." Emma appeared in the doorway, smiling at her parents. "You two are disgustingly romantic, you know that. We worked hard for this romance," Olivia replied. "Your generation expects everything to come easy." "Not me," Emma said seriously. "You and Father taught me what real partnership looks like. I will not settle for less when my time comes." After Emma retired to the guest room for the night, Olivia and Dalton remained in the parlor, reluctant to end the day. These quiet hours together had become increasingly precious as their responsibilities expanded and time seemed to accelerate. "I never thanked you properly," Olivia said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was at my lowest. For offering help without judgment or expectation. For being patient with my grief and my fear. For loving me through all of it." Dalton set aside his newspaper and pulled her into his arms. "You gave me just as much. Before you, I was just going through motions, working for a paycheck and sleeping in a bunkhouse with 5 other men. You gave me a home and a purpose, and a reason to build something lasting. We saved each other, Olivia. That is what makes it work." They held each other as the fire burned low, two people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful from tragedy and courage. Outside, the Arizona night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The land they had worked so hard to nurture stretched around them, productive and peaceful. The following years brought the expected joys and sorrows of life. They celebrated Daniel's marriage to a smart young woman named Helen from a neighboring ranch. They welcomed their first grandchild, a boy named Thomas Dalton Turner, and Olivia cried happy tears that her first husband's name would carry forward into another generation. Emma finished her nursing training and returned to Clifton, opening a small practice that served the community with compassion and skill. She eventually married a doctor from Tucson, and together they built a thriving medical practice that served the region. James completed his studies and took a position with the Territorial Geological Survey, spending his summers mapping and studying Arizona's landscape. He married a teacher he met in Tucson, and they settled there permanently, though they visited the ranch regularly. Through all these changes, Olivia and Dalton remained each other's constant. They were partners in the truest sense, facing challenges together and celebrating victories side by side. The ranch continued to prosper under their combined management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. When Olivia turned 55, Dalton organized a surprise party that brought together friends and family from across the territory. The house and yard were packed with people who had been part of their journey. Olivia stood on the porch, looking out at the celebration, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Dalton asked, coming up beside her and wrapping an arm around her waist. "I am thinking about how far we have come. About the girl I was when I first came to Arizona with Thomas, full of dreams and naivety. About the woman I became after losing him, hollow and desperate. About who I am now, standing here with you after nearly 30 years of building this life. Any regrets? Only that I did not appreciate every moment as fully as I should have. But I suppose that is human nature, to only recognize how precious time is after it has passed." "We still have time," Dalton reminded her. "Years and years if we are lucky." And they were lucky. They had another decade together. A decade of watching grandchildren grow, of managing the ranch they had built, of deepening their relationship in ways only possible with time and commitment. They took trips to see Emma's family in Tucson and Daniel's expanding ranch operation. They visited James during his field seasons, hiking through spectacular landscapes together. They were healthy and active well into their 60s, still riding together and managing daily ranch operations with the help of their children and hired hands. The orchard continued to produce abundantly, and Olivia still spent time there, sitting on the bench Dalton had made and reflecting on the unexpected beauty of her life. On a warm October evening, nearly 35 years after their wedding, they sat together on that bench as the sun set. Dalton had developed a persistent cough that concerned everyone, though he insisted it was nothing serious. Olivia held his hand and tried not to worry, tried not to remember Thomas's cough all those years ago. "You know what I am most proud of?" Dalton asked suddenly. "What?" "That we built something lasting. Not just the ranch, though that matters, but this family, these relationships, this network of love and support. We took tragedy and turned it into something beautiful. That is the greatest accomplishment of my life." "Mine too," Olivia agreed. "Though I would argue we did it together. Neither of us could have managed alone." "That is what makes it meaningful," Dalton said. "I love you, Olivia Turner. I have loved you from the moment I saw you chasing that stubborn cow across the range, determination written all over your face. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Olivia replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You taught me that the heart has infinite capacity, that love does not diminish love but multiplies it. You gave me back my life when I thought it was over. That is a gift I can never repay." They sat together until full darkness fell, wrapped in each other's arms, grateful for every moment they had shared and would share. The orchard rustled in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Life continued its eternal cycle, indifferent to human joy and sorrow, but also providing endless opportunities for both. Dalton's cough worsened over the following months, and despite Emma's medical attention and the best care they could provide, it became clear he was seriously ill. The diagnosis, when it finally came, was the same consumption that had taken Thomas all those years ago. The disease that had shaped Olivia's life was returning to claim another man she loved. But Olivia was not the same frightened young widow she had been decades earlier. She was 60 years old, strong and capable, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved her. And this time, she had years of happy memories with Dalton to sustain her through the dark days ahead. She nursed him with fierce devotion through the winter and into spring, refusing to accept the inevitable even as it became increasingly obvious. Dalton faced his illness with the same steady courage he had brought to everything in life, never complaining, always grateful for one more day. "I am not afraid," he told Olivia one evening as she helped him into bed. "I have had a good life, a full life. I have loved and been loved. That is more than most people get." "You are not allowed to leave me yet," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice light despite the tears streaming down her face. "We have plans. We were supposed to visit James next month, remember? You will still go. You will keep living, keep loving. Promise me that, Olivia. Promise me you will not stop just because I am gone." "I promise," she whispered, though the thought of continuing without him felt impossible. Dalton died on a May morning with Olivia holding his hand and all 3 children gathered around his bed. His last words were "love multiplies," and then he was gone, leaving behind a legacy of partnership and devotion that would echo through generations. Olivia grieved deeply but differently than she had grieved for Thomas. She was older now, more resilient, more aware that life continued despite loss. She had their children and grandchildren to support her, and the ranch they had built together to maintain. She had memories of 35 years of marriage, of love and partnership that had transformed both their lives. She buried Dalton in a plot next to where Thomas lay, bringing her 2 great loves together in death as they could never have been in life. Standing between their graves, Olivia felt the weight of her years and her losses, but also the tremendous privilege of having loved so completely twice. "Thank you both," she said to the graves, her voice steady despite her tears, "for teaching me what love means, what partnership requires, what courage looks like. You gave me a beautiful life." In the weeks and months that followed, Olivia continued working on the ranch with Daniel's help. She was 72 when she finally decided to step back from daily operations, turning over full control to Daniel while retaining ownership. She moved into a smaller house Daniel and Helen built for her on the property, a comfortable place with large windows overlooking the orchard. She spent her final years surrounded by family, watching great-grandchildren play in the same yards where her own children had run. She told stories about Thomas and Dalton, about the different ways they had loved her and the different strengths they had brought to her life. She made sure future generations understood that love was not finite, that the heart expanded to hold whatever it was given. Emma visited weekly, checking on her mother's health and bringing grandchildren who climbed in Olivia's lap to hear stories. James came when he could, bringing rocks and fossils that Olivia displayed proudly on her mantle. Daniel stopped by daily, often just sitting quietly with his mother, both of them comfortable with silence. On a September afternoon, nearly 45 years after burying Thomas and 5 years after losing Dalton, Olivia sat in her small house and felt death approaching. She was not afraid. She had lived fully and loved completely, had survived tragedy and built joy from ashes. She had children who were thriving, grandchildren who were happy, great-grandchildren who would carry forward the lessons she had tried to teach. Emma was with her at the end, holding her hand as Olivia's breathing grew shallow. "You were the best mother anyone could ask for," Emma said through tears. "You taught me everything important." "I taught you that love multiplies," Olivia whispered. "That is the only lesson that matters." She died peacefully that evening, a woman of 78 who had lived through loss and love, who had buried 2 husbands and raised 3 children, who had built a legacy that would endure long after her death. They buried her between Thomas and Dalton, 3 graves marking a complicated love story that spanned decades. At the funeral, Daniel spoke about his mother's courage and resilience. Emma shared stories of her mother's wisdom and compassion. James talked about how she had taught him to love the land and respect its mysteries. And all of them, along with their children and grandchildren, understood that they were products of a love that had refused to die, that had instead multiplied and grown until it encompassed generations. The Turner Ranch continued to prosper under Daniel's management, eventually passing to his children and then to theirs. The orchard Dalton planted and Olivia tended continued producing fruit year after year. The bench he built remained in place, a favorite spot for family members to sit and think and remember. And the story of Olivia Murray Turner became a family legend, passed down through generations. The story of a young widow who lost everything and found the courage to try again. The story of a cowboy who saw someone in need and offered help without expectation. The story of two people who built something beautiful from tragedy and proved that love, when tended with care and courage, can bloom twice and last forever. In the family Bible, preserved carefully and passed down through the generations, there was an inscription in Olivia's careful handwriting. Love does not diminish love but multiplies it. I loved Thomas Murray with all my heart. I loved Dalton Turner with all my heart. Both loves were real, both were complete, both shaped me into who I became. This is the legacy I leave to my children, that the heart is infinite, that grief and joy can coexist, that second chances are precious gifts to be embraced with courage. Love multiplies, never forget, and they never did.